Calgary. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Audrey and I are honored to be presenting to you about two recent projects that we're really proud of. But first we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Lamont, and I'm the Director of Strategic Events in the Office of Advancement at the University of Calgary. My team works on all of the institutional level donor, alumni, and stakeholder engagement events at the university.
And I'm Audrey Taylor-Bereznicki, Associate Director, Alumni Leadership Engagement and Recognition. And as part of our broader UCalgary alumni team, our specific smaller team focuses on alumni volunteerism in a number of different capacities and forms, as well as alumni recognition, which includes our Alumni Association Awards, the Arch Awards, which I'll be chatting a little bit more about today. Now, for a little bit of context, our teams, we work in an advancement model at the University Calgary, and in my case, I'm very fortunate to get to work with Caitlin's team on the awards, so very thankful to have them work with us there. So today we'll start really with a little bit more of the what of the plan and the pivot of our two signature events that were really meant to bring our community together this year in celebration. What we had envisioned as we were starting planning, and then largely what we had to do to pivot. So we'll be doing that for both Campaign Close and our Alumni Association Awards, the Arch Awards, which were planned for June 30th and September 10th, respectively. From there, we'll dig in a little bit further in the presentation to how we responded to the day. We'll outline some of those deciding factors, the elements that set each program up for success, some key tactics, and where our minds were at planning and where they are at now as we're planning for the future. So I'll pass off to Caitlin to get started.
Thanks, Audrey. In 2016, we launched an ambitious $1.3 billion fundraising campaign called Energize, the Campaign for Eyes High. The campaign closed on June 30th as the third largest successful campaign in Canadian history. We surpassed our fundraising goal by over $100 million to raise $1.41 billion. The impact of this campaign was immense, and we were obviously really looking forward to celebrating with our community. As part of an overall campaign close strategy, we were planning a large-scale, public-facing, experiential, in-person event where we would officially announce the final tally raised. The goal of this event was to celebrate and promote the impact of philanthropy and engagement at UCalgary, to instill pride amongst our stakeholders and the broader community, and to maintain positive momentum in our fundraising and engagement efforts. The event was going to have a formal program, focus on storytelling, and an engaging post-reception with large custom-built activation stations as the key focal point to showcase some of UCalgary's groundbreaking initiatives supported by philanthropy. So as you'll see on the photos that are appearing on the screen, the top left is of a custom-built stage we were in the middle of designing. This was with the intention of telling stories through highly visual projection mapping technology. The photo on the top right shows our inspiration for what we were calling the digital impact wall, where donor names and key stats from the campaign would be on rotation throughout the night. This concept was meant to replace the traditional permanent donor wall by still giving donors the opportunity to see their name displayed and acknowledged publicly. The bottom photos show our vision for the custom-built activation stations that would have been scattered throughout the post-reception. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we had to cancel this event. To give you an idea on timelines, we had just sent out the save the date at the beginning of March before having to send out a cancellation a couple weeks later in mid-March. Executive approval for this virtual celebration that we ended up hosting was granted in mid-April, which left us with only 2 months to pivot and execute on an entirely different plan. So we shifted the tone of the event significantly and designed a virtual event that would bring the city together to celebrate the extraordinary support of our donors and the impact that their gifts had in the community. This was our first experience with a fully virtual event, and we were concerned it might be difficult to keep our audience engaged. So we decided to keep the program short, concise, lighthearted, and entertaining. To achieve this, we pre-recorded everything in advance, but made it look like it was happening live. With limited experience producing online content at the time and limited time frame to plan, this provided us a sense of control. But it's not necessarily the direction we would take now that we have more experience with online content. The event was hosted by UCalgary President Ed McCauley and Naveen Peters, our Vice President in the Office of Advancement. A touching point in the program was when our president shared his personal giving story and passion for research and teaching. This was a humanizing moment for him and demonstrated his personal commitment to the university. In my opinion, the most impactful part of the program was a Zoom-like video montage we put together featuring inspiring donors and champions who showed that there's a story behind every gift to the campaign, regardless of size. We also included students, alumni, and faculty members to demonstrate how giving impacts people on both sides of every gift. The video is just over 4 minutes, so I won't share the whole thing, but I thought it would be nice to show a small piece of it.
Hi, my name is Emily Chen, and I'm a first-year student studying at the University of Calgary.
Hi, I'm Tina Rinker. I'm a biomedical engineering professor.
I'm Deborah Yedlin.
Hi, my name is Ash Kolstead. I'm a Master's of Science student.
My name is Samratha Badawadiki.
I'm Aretha Van Herk.
My name is Baljit Singh.
Hi, I'm Emmanuel Opade, and I'm a dinos wrestler.
Education is the greatest gift that anyone can receive or can give.
It is an equalizer. It opens the doors to tremendous possibility for people of all walks of life from anywhere around the world, from every part of the city.
We felt that it was essential to support students.
We made the gift to create the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning because of my experience when I went to university.
I started a scholarship for Brett Weiss, a very good friend of mine who passed away in 2013.
The scholarship that I received quite literally meant that I could pursue my dreams that I've had since I was a kid.
Our students are
So I had mentioned before that keeping the audience engaged and entertained was a top priority for us. So to close the program, we worked with students and alumni musicians on an energetic, social distance musical performance. The final result turned out beautifully and was a highlight for many attendees according to the post-event survey. We're going to share a short clip of that as well because I'm just so proud of how it turned out. Thanks, Audrey. With the event being virtual, we wanted to find other unique ways to engage with our stakeholders. So community partners to light monuments all over the city and some of our campuses in red to provide enhanced communication tactics, especially on social media. The picture you see here on the screen is one of our downtown campuses that we lit up in celebration of our achievement. And on the morning of the event, top donors received hand-delivered packages containing thank you cards and customized wine glasses or branded chocolates. Messaging included event details, either reminding them to attend or encouraging them to register depending on their RSVP status at the time. Our senior leadership team, students, and relationship managers delivered most of the packages personally, which was a nice touch point, especially with all the limitations in place due to COVID-19. The response we received afterwards from our donors was extremely positive, and they really appreciated the personal touch and attention to detail. I'll now pass it over to Audrey, who will share details about the annual Alumni Awards event.
Thanks, Caitlin. I have to say, I love that music video so much. There's some very enthusiastic and vigorous clappers in that group. I loved it. So to talk a little bit more about the Arch Awards, it really truly is a very long-standing program at the University of Calgary. We're headed into our 37th year in 2021. Now, the primary purpose of this program is really to recognize and celebrate the achievements of UCalgary alumni and to build pride in the community for our institution. In recent years, we've had a few more focused goals that provide a little bit of context to this program. So the first goal is really that we want to highlight and celebrate outstanding alumni. And that means for us that we start working really hard at nominations, collaborating with our faculties and alumni ambassadors, and getting the word out there for our call to nominations. The second goal is really increasing awareness and prestige of the program and creating a highly sought after event. And for us, this includes providing additional visibility to our University of Calgary Alumni Association Board of Directors and committees, and really helping our alumni connect with each other and not just the university. The third goal that we've been focused on is to inspire our community through the stories of our Arch recipients. Now, it's truly a year-round program. I'm sure if any of you have alumni work programs that you work on, you might feel the same way. Our program runs really from planning in November through until September when we have our large celebration, and we debrief in October and start it over again. So it's on my plate year-round, which is pretty fun. Now, the event itself is really the public celebration of nations, and in the past 3 to 4 years to our annual Alumni Weekend, which this year was pivoted by our colleagues with great success to be Alumni Month. Now, while nominations are typically done online, we have a great online tool that we use. Our selection meeting is in person, and once selected and approved, our recipients are notified by the president of the Alumni Association of their selection. That's typically done by phone, and from there we kick off the program elements, and that's typically early May that we start doing that. Now, we plan in-person video interviews, photo shoots, we write recipient stories, and in 2019, we were able to shoot at different sites that were really relevant and meaningful to the story of that particular individual. And in the work that we do, what I think is important to share as that we try to tie in throughout the program is that we highlight not only the achievements, the awards, and the milestones of what these individuals have accomplished, but also we like to share about more of who they are at their core, what motivates them, and what a turning point has been in their career. Now, all these program elements are really used throughout communications. They help us build our introductions for the in-person celebration, and even they last even into the sort of the call for nominations for the next year. So really the culmination of all in September. Now, in the past few years, we have hosted a recipients reception. It's a little bit of a smaller gathering just before the main program so that we can allow our recipients to meet each other, because many of them have never met before. And it provides an important stewardship opportunity, both for myself as staff, who typically I would get to meet these people a number of times throughout the year, but provides a stewardship point for our board to meet these individuals and for other University of Calgary representatives to have a moment with them as well. And we invite our alumni, community members, and we work with our recipients to ensure that their family, friends, and supporters are invited and also welcomed to celebrate with them at this program. Now, the formal program that follows the recipients reception is about 45 minutes, although we're a little bit subject to other people speaking remarks sometimes. We introduce each recipient, we play a short video about each of them, and each recipient has a moment to make a few personal remarks. And in the past 3 years, we've been fortunate to work with local alumna Rosa Marcatelli, who's in media, and she's been our MC with her fabulous, she's just fabulous. I can't say enough good things about her, and her fashion is so on point every year. We're always very impressed. So she does a wonderful job really engaging our audience and keeping things light and moving forward and celebratory. And we integrate remarks from our Alumni Association president and our University of Calgary president into this program as well. Now, to give you a little bit of a sense of how a typical video comes together, I'll share just a brief snippet of the video of our 2019 Career Achievement Award recipient, Grace Auger. We shot most of Grace's video and her photo shoot in a courtroom where she does the bulk of her work with Legal Aid Alberta on the CCAeLearning Nation.
from the Big Stone Cree Nation, which is in northern Alberta, Treaty 8 region. I promised myself that when I grew up, I was going to have a good life. My family doctor, when I was doing my undergrad, he one day pulled me aside and said, you know, I really believe you'd be a really good lawyer. Here's, you do the LSAT. He explained what to do. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I always said I wanted to be a lawyer, but I truly never believed I could do that. So,
an incredible level. One thing that you'll have seen in some of the collateral for previous years is we have an award that we've showed these individuals, and it's the award not quite with their name on it just yet. And it was a very special moment to share that with most of our recipients, and Grace in particular. That sort of surprise and unveiling was really very special. Now, moving to 2020. So where we were at really in planning for the Arch Awards for this year is we were in the middle of our nomination evaluation process and selection process, where we were headed home to work from home. So we shifted everything online. We utilized the polling function on Zoom to support our voting, which is something that we really liked and would like to continue doing. So that was really great. And for the most part, in the early stages, we were able to proceed in a fairly typical manner with notifications sort of moving forward over the phone as normal. But where the catch really was in trying to tell our recipients what exactly to expect in the coming months. So that certainly created a little bit of a challenge. We were very, very fortunate to have a group of very understanding recipients who were very flexible with us as we moved forward to finalize our plans. Now, one thing that's of note for our program is that it's fairly typical for us to have recipients who no longer live in Calgary. And this year, of our 6 recipients, 3 of them were not in Calgary. 1 was in the US and 1 was in Malaysia. So it was clear even early on that we would certainly not be asking these individuals to come to Calgary for an in-person celebration, never mind a photo or video shoot. It just wasn't in the cards for this year. So we got creative and we decided to actually commission a local artist to create individual portraits, as you can see on the slide here, which are incredibly beautiful and utilize our UCalgary colors in really wonderful ways. And these pieces were used to help create our story, our visual story throughout the awards. So that these pieces you'll see in a moment move forward into our videos and other elements as well on our website. Like Campaign Close, we shifted the entirety of the program online. And in our case, we used both pre-recorded and live content. So we shortened the length of our program to about 35 minutes to keep it short, snappy, and keep people's attention. And the pre-recorded elements included what would actually be typical in an in-person year for us. So our introductory video and our recipient videos, while the live portion included remarks from our Alumni Association president, UCalgary president, and of course, Rosa Marcatelli as our MC. So the format didn't change dramatically for that piece. It was really, we didn't have a reception to move to afterwards. That being said, there were a few additional areas that really needed to be reimagined, particularly around the goal of increasing the prestige of the awards, which for us includes creating that special experience for our recipients and building a bit more connection. So instead of being able to present that award to them on camera and film their reaction in a bit of a private setting, we packaged up the awards. We sent them off with a few other significant UCalgary items, including a print and framed version of their portrait, to get to them in time for the celebration. I was very fortunate that mailing services around the world had resumed, so I was actually able to get these packages to our recipients. Now, an additional area where we really needed to shift was how we were going to provide increased visibility to our Alumni Association board and further connect them with our recipients. So in this case, we were able to work with a number of select board members to send personalized videos of congratulations to each recipient that arrived in a recipient's inbox the day of the online celebration. So we used a tool called Thank You, and you can see our board member Ian Chicklow here, and the video sort of arrives with a digital envelope and opens itself up for the individual to play. Now, we were really fortunate again to work with the same MC this year, Rosa, who is really wonderful at getting an audience to engage online, and she was able to do that successfully this year. It was a really wonderful way for us to connect with our alumni and community participants from a distance. Now, I'd like to show you a little bit of a clip of one of our recipients from this year. So this video here highlights our 2020 Community Commitment recipient, Dr. Munawar. And as you'll see, we have the opportunity to include his nominator to help us tell his story. And this is something that really would not have been feasible without using Zoom. And even in a typical year, we would not have had the resources to have nominators or supporters speak in each video.
Munawar is a person I'll say is very motivated. When he finds there's a disaster or there's some sort of situation that people needs help, straight away he'll be thinking, you know, what can he do?
So, while these two different events had different goals, slightly different audiences and reach, there are a number of elements that were in common. So a number of elements in common which made them a success. Sorry, having some glitches with my slides there. We're going to shift gears just a little bit for the next part of our presentation to really highlight how some of those key elements, including the decision-making, planning, and tactics, how they all come together in this new environment with the pressures of COVID-19. And we'll share a little bit more about where we're at and thinking for the future.
So in both situations, we had no hope for an in-person event. So we knew we had to evaluate our options. So these options for us were to cancel completely, postpone until it was safe to proceed, or celebrate virtually. And for Campaign Close, we also discussed rescheduling for the 1-year anniversary. We had many conversations about whether or not it was even appropriate to celebrate during such an uncertain time. However, we couldn't miss the opportunity to rally together with our community. We eventually came to the conclusion for both of these events that we would move forward virtually, albeit with a different tone and an approach than our original plans.
Now, in addition to this, there are a number of key tactics that were important to meet our goals for these programs while really bridging that gap between an in-person experience and virtual experience. In both cases, each of our teams purposefully worked really hard to integrate and support our UCalgary community, being our on and off-campus community. And while neither of us actually mentioned it, both of our programs promoted alumni businesses directly so that people could select a special drink or a treat to enjoy while participating in the program. Now, for context, this key tactic really builds on several years of intentional focus at UCalgary to integrate the university with our community. So when we can, we do try to support our community, and in the case of the alumni office in particular, but even Caitlin's team, we work really hard to support alumni-owned businesses as vendors in a number of capacities. Now, the second tactic that we wanted to highlight today, sorry, I feel like our slides are a little bit off here. Anyway, we'll keep going. The second tactic we want to highlight today is about the creation of strategic high-touch engagement. The opportunity to connect key stakeholders in a meaningful way to Calgary was really top of mind for both of our teams as we work to transform these celebrations. And in both our cases, we identified key stakeholders and created segmented tactics to allow for a personal touch point. And what we noticed is that in both cases, this additional experience allowed our team to continue to build new and strengthen existing relationships with our community by showing that we're really thinking of them in a really personal way. So while the impact can be significant of this kind of tactic, depending on what you choose to do, you may find that it can be labor intensive, admittedly. So we would recommend that you balance team capacity with the impact of this kind of engagement point in your planning. While it may not be feasible for large stakeholder groups without significant additional resources, there are some things that are possible with smaller groups. And one way around some of this work is to really seek support from your ambassadors, which is what we were able to do with the Arch Awards this year. And that was as we worked with our Alumni Association Board to deliver those personal video messages to really steward our Arch Award recipients. Now, the third piece that we wanted to highlight as a key tactic is really that as we work throughout this presentation, what we notice is that there are bits and pieces of these tactics that are more significant that have been happening over the years, but certainly not at the level or frequency that the pandemic has demanded. And this is certainly true of our third key tactic that we wanted to highlight, which is the creation of on-demand content. With the onset of the pandemic, our teams shifted programs of all kinds, probably like many of you, to an online format. And in the case of Campaign Close and the Arch Awards, we recorded the full session, and both are available on demand to our communities to enjoy. Now, in an increasingly global world, sometimes this feels like maybe it should have happened sooner, as really the recording creates an additional touch point that didn't exist before the opportunity to build affinity for individuals who may not be able to attend for a number of different reasons, whether that be their schedule that may not permit them to attend, or typical timing, family demands or location, or other accessibility challenges. This online component, we've realized, is truly what allows us to meet them where they are and in a very scalable way. Now, for Caitlin's team and institutional events, I know they're now providing the registration option of, I can't attend, but please do send me the recording. And they're finding that with each event, the numbers of this option that's been selected are really increasing. And it really shows, again, that we're thinking of these people, and it also creates a unique segmented communication opportunity that Caitlin's team is able to take advantage of and really segment and personalize those communications in another way. There's a real added bonus to this as well that we wanted to touch on, which is that being able to so easily record your content, you're now able to leverage that content easily and use it on different platforms, scale it up in different ways. And in the case of the Arch Awards, while we're normally capped at about 300 people, we're able to reach folks around the world, which we weren't able to do in the past. Now, additionally, that recorded content, while it was something that we did a little bit in the past, I'm sure Caitlin's team did as well, and my colleagues in the alumni office would pull aside a speaker and record things for social media. I can't stress enough that it really is a duplication of work, whereas now you can sort of clip it and repurpose it. So I'll pass it off to Caitlin to get going on pre-planning success factors.
Yeah, so thank you. There are obviously a number of factors that set us up for success, but for us, it came down to having strong program goals and cohesive interdisciplinary working groups. For strong program goals, one thing that we've noticed in the race to get virtual content online, excuse me, many events are losing track of either their original goals and objectives, or they're missing the step completely and not defining them up front. Obviously, goals will need to change based on the different circumstances we find ourselves in, but it's still an incredibly important first step when starting to plan virtual events. That leads nicely into the interdisciplinary working groups, which during this period of remote working became even more important than ever for both of our projects. And having those clearly defined goals so that everyone knew what we were working towards and the outcome we were trying to achieve was very beneficial. For me, a key takeaway here is that the steps taken to plan a virtual event shouldn't be that different from in-person events. And Audrey, do you want to touch on the planning for the future?
Absolutely. So some of the key texts that we highlighted earlier today and the goals piece are really things that are, top of mind for us as we're planning for the future. And in my case, our working group is really in the early stages of talking about Arch Awards 2021. Now, there are both new opportunities and some more logistical elements for us to look at to really ensure that our programs meet the needs and demands of the future. And we're trying to think openly about what that means. And what I guess I'm trying to communicate is that really this is an opportunity for us to look at the structure of our program and to see if it needs to be updated to really meet the future where it's at. And for Arch Awards, something that I'm thinking of is that we need to take a look at our terms of reference, our guidelines, eligibility to see if there are any pieces that need to be updated. A few years ago, we had actually made a change to require recipients to be present in person to receive their award, something which we obviously ignored this year. For everybody, but it's something that maybe we want to update to be more flexible in the future. Now, like many of you, a number of staff across campus at the University of Calgary have been getting a crash course in online programming and innovating what we've done out of necessity. And heading into 2021, we're moving forward for Arch Awards anyway, with planning with the knowledge that we have some uncertainty, but only to a certain extent. So what we do know is that there will likely be an online celebration that is supported by a small and safe in-person celebration of some kind, if possible. And lots of details are to be ironed out, but what we are sure about is that we will have a secondary plan that is a bit of a contingency plan that will guide us should our COVID-19 situation change suddenly. Now, there are some additional questions that we're asking ourselves as we sort of move forward with programming, and that includes, how will people respond to invitations to in-person events once they resume? No matter when we resume these things, there will be some people who feel that it is undoubtedly too soon, and others will feel it's probably too late. So another piece that asking myself is whether or not invitations to in-person events will become few and far between, and whether those invitations, when I do receive them, will feel extra special. So these are just a couple questions that are rolling around, and I know there are at least a few people that I am familiar with who are hoping that name tags will die a slow and painful death. But Caitlin and I chatted about it, and our hot take is they're still really important in the work that we do.
That's funny. So looking ahead to the future, in my opinion, I don't think virtual events are going anywhere. And I agree with what Audrey said, that the pandemic has given us a much needed push forward into the digital world. There are so many opportunities that come with this new world, including our ability to connect with more stakeholders, especially those living outside of Calgary, which hasn't always been possible for these in-person events in the past. I believe that lots of our virtual content will continue, and that our signature events that were once in person will be moving to a hybrid model moving forward. And lastly, for us, as we look ahead to next year's programs, we're focusing on how to make our virtual content more engaging and how to provide meaningful opportunities for attendees to interact with us and each other. So we're now happy to take questions if you have any for us.
Thank you both. So just as folks get closer to their keyboards, once again, please make use of the chat or the Q&A function. Thank you, ladies, very much. Before we move into questions, I will say that song is now going to be in my head for a couple of days. Audrey, I saw you doing a bit of a head bob. I'm not gonna lie, I was too. So it's always great to see some successes and some involvement and engagement of that nature. So some excellent points that you brought up, but I want to dive into some of the attendee questions. And so the first one that has come in reads as such. Do you have rules of engagement or best practices on texting or using chat during these online events? How do you handle having your boss or a volunteer sending you texts while you are trying to run the event or otherwise keep the event on track?
I guess I can start. I don't know that we have outlined best practices for that yet, but in our experience, we do. So for the first question, for keeping in touch during the presentations, we do engage on the chat function, sending private messages. And we also collect everyone's cell phone numbers in advance so that we are able to communicate that way if necessary. But for the most part, we try to limit that, as it can be a distraction. And we also know that some people, depending on their comfort level with these online tools, they're just not able to, they're distracted by it. So they might not even see the chat. So we do a lot of pre-prep with them in advance just to go through all of the different scenarios to hopefully avoid those communications. And then as far as other people on your team communicating with you throughout, I guess that would be a personal preference for how to handle that. But I guess with more experience and time, you are able to kind of juggle a few things and read comments from people and decide what needs to be responded to and what doesn't need to be responded to until afterwards.
Perfect, thanks, Caitlin. Audrey?
I think the only thing that I would add, and actually Caitlin and I were, I think, chatting about this earlier. Sorry, my cat is meowing now in the background. The one thing I think I would add is that we've talked about sort of an element of trusting that your colleagues are doing their best, and that if what you're going to be communicating to them, or maybe what is communicated to you, because you might be the recipient of this message, if it's not going to make a difference, if you can't change what's happening now, it's not helpful to have that information while something is live, whether that's online or in person, truly. So maybe that is a conversation to have.
That's a great recommendation. Post-session debriefs are also something that's done in person, but it should also be a practice that's brought to the online space. CCA spends a lot of time online. There are a lot of texts flying in the background with private chats. And so it's a great question. And so if it's somewhere that you and your team are moving in the future and you've thought about it, it might be important for your team to have a conversation around it. So another question that has come in, can you remind the group what your in-person order of proceedings look like? The awards and then reception, length of the awards portion, etc.
Absolutely, yeah. So for the Arch Awards, we have about a 30-minute recipients reception that we keep the invites pretty tight. So it's the recipient, one guest, the deans of their faculties of graduation, and our board president. So it's supposed to be about 30 people. So we do that for about 30 minutes, and then we open it up for folks to start coming in. And in the past year, we were in a theater. So we let people in about 30 minutes in advance and started the presentation. The actual formal program was about 45 minutes. And there was a post-program reception in a more open space that was probably about an hour and a half. Caitlin, I'm not sure if you recall. I think it was about an hour.
Yeah, I would say about an hour and a half.
Perfect. In regards to both events, were they ticketed events? If so, did the price reflect a virtual event versus in-person event costs? Also, you mentioned sourcing local food options. How did you handle delivery/takeout and price points?
So neither of these events were ticketed. They're by invitation and registration, so there's no cost associated with attending. From a budget perspective, the budgets changed significantly in terms of where the costs would be spent. So from an AV perspective, like we both worked with professional AV companies to ensure the quality of the broadcast was high. So we just shifted some of the expenses in that regard. Can you remind me of the second part of the question? That was
tickets and sourcing local food options.
Oh, yes. So for that, Audrey had mentioned that we did for both events. And we kind of left it up to our audience. So we gave them suggestions of some companies that were owned by local alumni businesses that they might want to support, and gave them suggestions of some cool items that they could go out and purchase and then enjoy while watching the programs.
Perfect, thank you. Audrey.
I was going to add, as far as sourcing for some of those local options, our team has been maintaining an alumni business directory for some time, just in a Teams document. So it's something that makes it fairly easy for us to go to look for relationships to build upon. I would say that from what I've observed, and this is something that we've done often for gifts in particular, that instead of giving swag from our institution, we will go to a local vendor. So there's a local chocolate place that we've been using, or we have a monopoly on coffee in Calgary, which is kind of funny. Lots of engineers moving to coffee. And so we'll go to them. And typically what we're doing is we're actually building on a relationship that's been started through storytelling. So we'll often hear about these individuals, there's a story, and we ask if they want to continue to engage, and we pay them full price. We're not asking for discounts because we want to support them fully in the work that we do. In regards to delivery and takeout, we didn't manage any of those pieces. We let the vendors handle all of that element. So really it was just directing people in that space. Yeah, and yeah, Arch Awards, we've never actually charged a ticket as far as I know for the awards, so it remained free.
Perfect. So there's a bit of a follow-up question as it relates to the local support and the alumni businesses during the event. So do you encourage individuals to purchase food and drinks from the alumni business? Is this something, in addition to that list you keep, that you help facilitate, or do you link the businesses? Like, is there an active promotion that you do in relation to those alumni food and beverage sources?
Okay, I'll jump in. So typically what we've done is we actually integrate it into our storytelling overall. I'd have to look back on the different pieces, but for both campaign and Arch Award, Campaign Close and Arch Awards this year, we used storytelling to say, you know, season of celebration, this is something that's happening at UCalgary. If you're looking to have something special that night, here are some great vendors that are alumni owned, with a little bit more information about the alumni who might be involved and the business itself. So it's not something, if you're like, to get into specifics, it's not something that's pushed out in a post registration email or anything like that. It's a very soft recommendation if people are interested.
Perfect. Caitlin, anything to add?
I would echo that. Yeah, I would say a soft recommendation. We did put it in once somebody had registered for the event and they get their confirmation email, it would be the details of the event, and we would include a link to the storytelling component. And so not suggesting that they do, but offering it as an option.
Perfect. So as they relate to metrics, this event you had mentioned earlier, there's no ticket sales, it's by invitation only, and it was in person and now it's been moved online. What metrics were you using as you navigated historical events as they compare to this online event to be able to use as markers for success?
I'll talk about campaign close first. This one was more difficult because it's not a recurring event like the Arch Awards, so we really didn't have a baseline to go from. So we did have original goals that we used our discretion in adjusting, really to just see where we could, where we thought we could go, and then after the event we just did our regular look at all of the metrics that we would follow and reported back on what actually happened. So we did do, I guess it's estimated guesses. It was all we could do with what we wanted to accomplish, and we had high hopes for everything, and then we just we did what we could and reported back as we would a regular event. So along the lines of what we were talking about earlier, that the virtual engagements should be treated very similarly to if they happened in person. So we used the same metrics. We might have tweaked a few and added some, but really it was a very similar process.
Perfect. Audrey?
Yeah, from Arch Awards, I echo a lot of what Caitlin said. And so because we have such a history with the Arch Awards and we've actually been building attendance over the past few years, that was something that we still wanted to be paying attention to for Arch Awards, knowing that we really had no clue what the response was going to be, but attendance was still something we looked at. And one thing I'm really glad that we added, because we do, I should mention, we do a post-program survey for the majority of our programs on our team and Caitlin's team as well. So we use those same metrics talking about, how, if they would, like our net promoter score, questions like that. So we have a standard set of questions that we ask that we can benchmark with, even from the past sort of 4 or 5 years with Arch Awards and across our suite of alumni programs. But the question I'm really glad that we added to this survey was we asked how many people, including yourself, watched the Arch Awards. Because that allowed us, although certainly it's not perfect, it allowed us to extrapolate a little bit what the actual online attendance was as tracked through Zoom versus how many eyes might have actually been on the screen. So that's something that I would recommend adding. It sort of gives you a little bit of a better sense. And certainly in the case of Arch Awards, I know a few people who watched with a friend or family member.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Sorry, Caitlin, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a really good point. And we did the same thing for this campaign close event, and it was very helpful. But again, not perfect. People don't always know right up front who they're going to be watching with, but it did help a lot.
Great. And that's us. And you mentioned it earlier in terms of some of your recipients from the individual from Malaysia and such. And there are some silver linings to moving some of these offerings to a virtual space. CCA saw with some of our awards family members for the first time were able to tune in and watch a loved one receive accolades for whatever it is they may have done, which in the past we were not able to do. And that's something that in many cases award recipients come with a spouse or a child, but it's very rare we get the whole extended network of that individual, including the nominator. And in a shift to the volunteer side and some of those external constituents, a question about volunteers. How have you managed training your volunteers who may be in positions to help host virtual events and who may not have a level of comfort or experience using the online platform you are using?
I can start. To be completely honest, we haven't really been using volunteers to the same capacity as we did in the live event world. So I don't have any insight to offer really, other than maybe personal opinions, but Audrey,
you may share a personal opinion, Caitlin, if you would like. We are in a safe space.
I guess my personal opinion is I probably wouldn't trust volunteers with running of the webinars or background, especially if they didn't have a lot of experience doing it. That's just maybe me being a little bit controlling of everything, wanting it to go as well as possible. But for me, there's a lot of reduced roles in the back end for putting on these virtual events when they actually go live. So I feel like for us, we've decided to keep that to our core group of people who are getting as much experience, because even with lots of experience, we're still learning every time something comes up. So for us, I haven't found where we would use volunteers for that, but I mean, if this continues on for a longer time, that's something that maybe we will have to look at more.
You are talking to a virtual room of planners. People understand how hard it is to give your baby to somebody else. Audrey, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say probably the majority of volunteers that we're working with right now are speakers, and Rosa volunteers her time for us, and we're very fortunate with her that she knows what to do, which is really great, and has experience in this space. We do like what Tara did for Caitlin and I. We do bring our volunteer speakers together. We have a team of people who support everything we do. I mean, Caitlin and I are the ones here speaking today, but there's a huge team of people across advancement who support this work, and in particular supporting those speakers and making sure they're comfortable. So walking people through, opening up a Zoom room, walking them through, having them test it out, launch their PowerPoints, their cameras and things like that, make sure they understand those elements. And that, I think, for our more public pieces is where we're integrating more large scale, maybe more university initiated events is where we're integrating volunteers. Through some of the other volunteer work that our team works on, we have alumni volunteers who are hosting their own pieces. So we'll set up the Zoom room and they sort of carry forward on their own. We give them the basic tools. And for the most part, these people, they're taking it upon themselves to plan something. So they're going to take it upon themselves to learn the tool to make sure that they're also prepared. So I'd say depending on the program for Arch Awards, that is, we're hiring a broadcast studio to support us. Like, this is something that we would not have volunteers on the back end. But for smaller scale programs, certainly I think there's some space to explore how that could work. And, you know, even as an example, if you want to do breakout rooms for discussion, you can have volunteers facilitating breakout rooms and that kind of thing. I'm always happy to talk about volunteer stuff, so please feel free to reach out after this presentation. Yeah.
Perfect. So we're coming up to the bottom of the hour. So a note to folks, if you have any questions, we do have some time to field one or two more. So please go ahead and leave that in the chat or the Q&A. As people are getting more and more used to being spoken to in the virtual space, it is important that the time that you put into the front and the back end of it match the product that you want to come from your institution. And so, you know, to Audrey and Caitlin's points in terms of who's creating, who's hiring a broadcast team, and the time it takes to prepare presenters, it's very valuable because it's still your product that you're putting out there ultimately. So just quickly, the last question I think I had seen come in was just in terms of the Alumni Association as they relate to the Arch Awards. Was there any need for negotiations or extended conversation in terms of moving that awards as they relate to your Alumni Association virtual space?
You know, I'm really glad to say, I mean, we involved them in the conversation a little bit and provided them with our recommendation and the reasons why. And we're very fortunate that everyone agreed that with such a long-standing program and with, you know, our vision of trying to be a really bold institution, that this is something that we wanted to move forward with in whatever way possible. So we didn't have to negotiate a whole lot in that space, to be perfectly honest.
Perfect. And then the last one I have, I'm on your website now, and I believe this is the website for the Arch Awards. So if folks had wanted to peek back at some of those videos, I popped that link in the chat for you. If there's videos or things that you had wanted to see, we only got a short snippet of most of those. Feel free to get in touch with Caitlin or Audrey. And if there's any questions, feel free to send them through CCAE or directly to the presenters. Any closing thoughts, ladies, before we adjourn today?
No, thank you very much, Tara, for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, really lovely. We can't wait to see what everyone else is doing as well in the coming year. I think everyone is going to continue to sort of innovate by necessity, but also now hopefully out of interest. So yeah, I'm excited to see what else everyone has to bring, and thank you for joining us and listening in.
Thank you both very much. To you all, thank you. Thank you for spending some time with us. Thank you for being with us. Again, all of these e-learning sessions, everything from the last couple of months, are available online and on demand. If you have anything at all that you would like to inquire about, you can get in touch with any of us or the CCA office. It feels early, but it's the time to wish you all a happy holidays, a wonderful break. Thank you for your time, and stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you all again soon. Take good care, everybody.